Hey everybody, welcome to episode 42 of the Hey Kerwin Show, coming to you live from Santa Monica. We are down here and this is the injured edition. I've just pulled my hamstring. We're here for our K2 Superhuman event. I'm literally sitting on ice. I pulled my hamstring, sitting in the park. It's a beautiful day and Maddie said we may as well do a Hey Kerwin. So
first question comes from Tim Berg.
Tim Berg.
How do you overcome criticism? I understand we shouldn't care what other people think, but I do.
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, like what other people think of us, it's none of our business. And criticism is like any other form of stress. It's like any other trigger. You know, the more we expose ourselves to it and the more tools we have to regulate the emotions and the stress that it brings up when it happens, the easier it is to deal with. You know, I think one of the things that a lot of people assume is the more successful you become, the less criticism you get. But in many respects, the more successful you become, ultimately the more visible you are, and that has the potential to attract more criticism. That has the potential to attract more haters. And that's the thing. You know, in Australia we have this thing called the tall poppy syndrome. We love the Aussie battler until he's so rich and successful, and then he's a pedophile and drug dealer. And that, in many respects, is the way that some people operate as they find success a threat. So we've really got to become comfortable with the idea that not everyone's going to like us, and also comfortable and okay with the idea that not only is not everyone going to like us, but there are going to be some people that actually cross that boundary from not liking us to actually verbalising some form of criticism or verbalising some form of hate. And look, let's be honest, we're mammals, and the ultimate driver of a mammal is connection. And when we receive that kind of rejection, it is going to have an impact. It is going to be a trigger, and so it's up to us to learn how to recreate a meaning around those rejections that's going to enable us to build strength versus erode us and create levels of weakness. But ultimately, it's not about running away from the criticism. It's about learning how to stand in the rain and actually dance in the rain. The criticism is the rain, and if you can dance in the rain, then it doesn't matter what the weather is, you'll be able to have fun. I hope that helps, Tim Berg.
Next question. Elizabeth Inglis Williams.
Hey Liz.
How do you give back fears caused from trauma, such as a child seeing abuse and is now afraid of being yelled at or hit by their partner? How does someone give something like that back?
Look, I think the way that you give anything back is through healing, and from that video where I said we basically adopt fears from other people, there's more to it than just giving that fear back. We've got to deal with that underlying trauma. We've got to deal with that underlying fear. But ultimately, we've got to look, when you deal with any form of trauma, most forms of trauma therapy is about going back into that trauma and recreating new memories so that we remember the experience in a different way, in a more fulfilling way, in a more empowering way. I think the way that we give our fears back is by balancing them out, and first of all realizing that we do only have two fears. We're born with two basic fears, and we're born with the fear of falling, we're born with the fear of loud noises, and every other fear that we have adopted through our experiences and through our observations and through modelling. And the way that we give those fears back is by exposing ourselves to those fears for extended periods of time with the right tools, but also with the realisation that these things don't fundamentally kill us, but they do have the potential to make us stronger with the right tools. And that's where, for me, any form of therapy, any form of, trauma therapy or transcendence of fears, it requires a set of tools. In most cases, you're not going to transcend fear. You're not going to transcend trauma, just by sitting on it. You've actually got to do something with it. And for me, the way that we do something with it is by exposing ourselves to the things that actually, create fear for us, and, developing the tools that's required to regulate the emotion and to regulate the stress that we experience when those fears, are ultimately triggered. And it's a process, and realising that we may not transcend those fears immediately. It may take time, and we've got to be kind to ourselves, because the last thing we want to do is, in the process of transcending fears, if we're not at the level that we want to be able to transcend that information, transcend those emotions and transcend that fear, is to be beating ourselves up because we're just creating a negative association. The goal with the transcendence of any form of fear is to look at the benefit. What is the benefit of this fear? How is this serving me? And what skills, knowledge, experience am I getting as a result of this fear that is actually making me better? But then we use exposure therapy, which is a form of de-association, to disassociate the emotional trigger, disassociate the emotional impulse that's created, the biochemical impulse, the bioneurological impulse that's created as a result of that exposure. And the more we do that with the right tools, the easier it gets to be able to regulate and maintain. And again, much like the very first question, it's not about wishing that we had less things to be afraid of. It's about wishing that we had more tools to be able to regulate the fears that we have, so that we can deal with them in the moments that they're present. So I hope that helps.
Crystal McInnes.
Hey Crystal.
I find it easy to be overwhelmed. by business, relationships, anxiety?
Hey, mate. The race is on. The race is on. I told you, we're in the middle of the amazing race. The K2, the Hey Kerwin Amazing Race Edition.
Crystal McInnes.
Hey, Crystal.
Easy to be overwhelmed to the point that I procrastinate all day instead of doing. Where do I start?
You just start with, how do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. And the thing we need to do, to overcome any form of procrastination is to take an action. Overwhelm is one of those things that you can't escape. And much like the previous two questions, it's not about wishing that that life was easier, that there was less overwhelm. It's about, creating the tools and developing the tools that enable us to deal with overwhelm better. But then having a system, because we have a system to deal with overwhelm. We have a system to regulate stress and emotion, but we also need a system to be able to prioritize the things that are important so that we do the things that are important that enable us to get the level of momentum that's required, that in many cases make other things either obsolete or a lot easier to deal with. Everything in life is easier to deal with when you have momentum going in the right direction. And that's one of those things when it comes to dealing with overwhelm, when it comes to procrastination. To me, overcoming procrastination is a game of momentum. And the way that we overcome or create momentum is by taking a step in a particular direction. We build inertia. And the way that we build inertia is by moving in a particular direction. And at first it might be slow, but the more we move in that direction, the more pace we get and the better we get at moving in a particular direction, the more inertia we have, and then the easier it is to be able to deal with those situations and circumstances, the easier it is to deal with overwhelm. But more importantly, the easier it is to deal with that procrastination, because if we literally start to train ourselves to take action when we feel procrastination, the moment, like if you literally train yourself, the moment you become consciously aware that you're procrastinating, you literally go, right, just take one action right now. If you constantly train yourself to do that, it becomes habitual, and once it's habitual, it becomes autonomous, and then you literally associate procrastination with taking action, and then every time you go to procrastinate, you actually take some form of action. So, the best way to hack procrastination is by training it to create behaviours that move you in the right direction. And but it's like anything, it takes time. You're not going to do this in one session. You're not going to get fit by going to the gym once. You're not going to get slim by eating one salad. You've got to be willing to do this consistently over and over in order to get the rewards that come with that behaviour. But ultimately it's consequential. Do the things that as a natural consequence will create the behaviour that you want. And if you do them consistently, that creates, in a ritualistic manner, that creates habitual behaviour, and habitual behaviour becomes autonomous, and then we're free. And then once we're free, we don't have to think about overcoming procrastination. It's a natural impulse.
Next question is from Julian van der Waal. Do you have a HR formula of when you put more staff on?
A HR formula for when you put more staff on. Well, I wouldn't say we have a HR formula, but we basically, when we hire, we're looking for two things. We're looking for performance, and we're looking for culture fit. And performance is understanding, being able to work at a particular level of output, with a particular level of skill. And, culture is about being aligned with a purpose, with a mission, with a set of values, so that behaviourally everyone's moving in the right direction. When it comes to performance, one of the things that we look for, when it comes to a formula, is people who have a background, in some form of discipline. I'm really attracted towards people who have a background in competitive sports, or anything that is of competitive nature, martial arts, professional sports, anything whereby they've had a routine over a period of time that has required them to apply discipline towards a specific task repetitiously, that in many cases has shown them how to push through barriers. And so for me, performance is one of those things that I'm really interested in. People who've got a background in performance, but they've also got to have a particular skill set. And the way that we assess for skills, we've got this three-part process, context, concept, and outcome. So for me, if I'm trying to assess someone's particular skills, the first thing I want to do is say, tell me about a particular time where you've had to use this skill. Context. Tell me exactly what you did. Content. And then tell me exactly what happened, which is the outcome. And so for me, someone might be able to fudge you, one or two times when you're trying to assess a skill, but if they're really good at what they are, they're not going to, if they're not good at what they are, ultimately they're going to come undone. So for me, say for example, if I'm assessing someone when it comes to Facebook advertising, I'll say, okay, tell me about a time where you had to set up a particular funnel using Facebook ads. And tell me exactly, give me the context, give me the strategy. What were you doing? What was the goal? What was the funnel? And then it's like, okay, tell me exactly what steps you took. How did you actually set it up? What was step one? What was step two? So I'm looking for the technical expertise. And again, you've got to have some kind of a technical understanding to be able to assess technical expertise. But when you can sit there and get them to tell you step by step exactly what's involved in the process, that creates the picture of whether or not they know technically exactly what's involved in the execution of that concept. And then the outcome is what happened. And you can use that for any skill, whether it be Facebook ads or basically any skill whatsoever, sales, and it gives you a really good picture of the understanding of the process of the skill set that's required. And then culture. That to me is the formula for that is really just finding out about what their natural values are, what's important to you, what do you do on your time off. If you didn't have to worry about money, what would be the things that you'd be putting your life towards, and what would be some of the things that you're doing. And that for me, when you ask those questions, it's indicative of and then what to do is listen, and what you listen to will be indicative of what's important to them. And if those values align with the values of the organisation, then you're going to have a greater probability of cultural alignment, which is going to really support you in the relationship stage or the relationship side of the business. So if there's a relationship, if there's a HR formula, they're the three things that we look at. We look at culture, we look at performance, and we look at skill. That's works pretty well for us. But understanding, depending on what your criteria for performance is going to reduce the talent pool that you're going to have access to. Some businesses have greater talent pools than others because there's less skill set required, less performance requirements, and in some cases less cultural requirements. That might be needed on when it comes to the business owner. Whereas for us, we have very high standards when it comes to performance, very high standards when it comes to culture, very high standards when it comes to skill sets. So that means that for businesses that have that kind of perspective, you're going to have a much more limited talent pool, which means you're probably going to have to work harder to find the talent you're looking for. So I hope that helps.
That is enough for an episode, but I would like to someone here ask you a question.
Yeah, all right.
Does anyone have a question for Kerwin?
Anyone's got a question? We're going to go live to the studio audience here in Santa Monica for Hey Kerwin. What's your Hey Kerwin question?
My Hey Kerwin question is, in 5 years' time, what does K2 look like in your vision?
Oh, that's a very good question. And then the honest answer is, it is an evolution of what it is right now. Like, I see K2 becoming even more so the most exclusive network and tribe of elite business people and conscious entrepreneurs. And for me, it's about creating a greater level of solidarity within that family and a greater level of support within that family in order to be able to affect people at a higher level. And by then, who knows? I'd say we'll probably be in North America, probably be in Canada, and there's every possibility we may be in Asia as well. But for me, the most important thing when it comes to K2 in the next 5 years is making sure that it is sustainable. Thank you, Julie Fletcher.
All right.
42.
That's episode 42 of the Hey Kerwin Co. The Hey Kerwin Show down here in Santa Monica. Beautiful LA, beautiful day for the K2 conference. Superhuman with my superhuman injury, pulled hamstring, with my superhuman friend over here who's also pulled his hamstring, Sean. So, question of the day. Because I'm talking here with my mate Sean, we both pulled our hamstrings, we're both hobbling around like invalids. What has been the most, and we're both just discussing how annoying it is to pull your hamstring because it's like literally just below the waist, and I'm not in a lot of pain, I just can't fucking walk, and I'm hobbling around like an invalid. What is the most annoying injury that you've ever had, and what did it prevent you from doing that was really important? Let me know below. For those of you who got some questions, hashtag Hey Kerwin across all social channels. My name is Kerwin Ray. Hope to see you next time. Say hi to your mum for me. Oh, did I have my nipples out?